Hey everyone, it's Paul Grossman. This is our second part of this video. We're going to take a look and get deep into the weeds of the code that just did the lexical analyzer and used optical character recognition in order to pull that off. So let's bring back up our application and see what we were doing out there. We were interacting with a calculator and trying to get it to pull off a few little stunts here. So here's our code that we're going through. This is our main script that is essentially going to go through and see if what row it's at and then process through the lines of code as it picks up the plain English, starting off with launching the calculator. So as it launches the calculator, it is essentially looping through. Here's our rows. We're picking up the row and getting what the name of the step is, and getting the names of the code that we're going to execute. We picked up the text, and we go and start converting our English into code. So let's go to the description here. And here is my converting English into code. And we'll move that off a little bit so you can see what we're doing here. I'm using a advanced print function that prints out all sorts of information out here about what it is that we are interacting with. That gives us some output here that actually spits out what it is that we are generating on the fly. And we didn't have a chance to actually see that as it was going along, but it was being populated out. And you can see some of the steps that we are adding up here. We are adding 7 and 5, and we are consuming all those values out of that string, and then building up our code, and then finding out that we couldn't find the object we were looking for because text does not contain the word 7. So in this case, we use the OCR to match object 10 to the win button 7 to go find it. So a lot of this output is just coming right out of that print statement. And this is explaining step by step as we go through what exactly it is that we're doing as we go through our code. So let me bring our code back over and move it over here. We only have a few minutes to do this. So here is our code as we go through. We are going to go through creating a scripting dictionary that holds onto a lot of our values that we're using when we are trying to interact with our stuff. This allows us to eliminate a lot of the property values that are being passed back and forth between the parameters. Now, I know that there is a programming bad practice called action at a distance where we are making a lot of variables global, but I keep the majority of my objects global in one area. It's my global dictionary. So objects go out to that dictionary to go find data out there. In this case, here we are picking up what the current keyword is. Our current framework supports launch and click, and it also supports verify. So it's a small little framework. And if we are launching, this is our launch out here, we're saying, okay, give us the first object that we're looking for, whatever the name it is, and it's calc is what we passed into it. And then later on, we're going to go and execute that. And we're also removing the items from the array as we showed you earlier on as we go through. The next thing is we're going to go into click and prep that. In this case, we're looking to see if we can find the class that's inside that array. So if we go over to our definition for finding the class, here we are going through and saying, well, can we find edit, field, button, link, and identify these as the class that we're going to be interacting with on this object. And if we did find the class, then we store that off in our framework. And we'll be working with that a little bit later. And then, of course, removing that item from that array. You'll also notice we have a report error. Report error tells us if any one of our functions actually has a problem. So there's find class, and then if we go over to report error, we can go over to the definition and see what report error does. It basically says, hey, if the error object that we passed in here had a problem, go report it out and tell us what happened. And also keep track of what was the function name that did this. So it makes it a little bit easier to identify exactly where coding issues come from. If you're looking for the message box advanced, that is a self-closing dialog box. This is how it pulls it off. And you can also find samples of this in the HP Help Dictionary, help file. So let's go back a little bit over to where we were executing through our code. At the top of this particular function library, I'll note that there are a lot of global strings out here. We're using them just to keep the words, keyword, object names. These are the naming convention names of the values that we have in our array that's being used. And we're also setting up some of our return values, our counters, whether we are determining whether we're in strings or not. In string tells us, well, if we wanted to click on a button that wasn't okay, maybe the button was submit item to the list. In that case, we could put submit item to that list inside of quotes and identify that as prepositions that we do not want to remove from our string for processing. So here we are, continuing back. We talked about converting this to code. This is where we're doing our click. We found the class. We then go and find the object name. We go and find the property name and start building up. Here it is. Here's the property we're going to use. And the property class we would use, let's go over there and jump to that definition. Here's our property class. We're looking through to see if we have a button, an edit, a static type of objects. These are the three that we're currently supporting just in the demo. And you'll also notice that we have a function here that's called already failed. Now, already failed is just a value that tells us if something's gone horribly wrong. If we couldn't click on a button, it's most likely we're not going to be on the right page. If we couldn't find the button to click on it, we report that we already failed. And this basically keeps us from executing other lines of code. And this is basically code stubbing, where we are not doing any additional code if we've already had a major problem with the test. All right, back over to our functions. Let's see what we got up here. And we do have a lot of them to go through, and we have about 2 minutes to talk about them. Not a whole lot of time. So we went through the click, and we also have a verify. The verify goes through and we'll say, well, what kind of verification are we going to do? We got to find the validation that we're going to perform. So let's go over to that function over there. Find validation goes through and says, okay, what kind of validation are we doing? Normally by default, we're going to do an exist, an exist or an equals. So exist says, okay, if we make sure this item exists, then we do find validation says it's true. Yeah, we're doing exist. And we save that off into the type of validation we're doing. However, we could use is, equals, and the equal sign to do this value equals that value. We could also do contains, where we're looking for some value inside of another value. If these guys have been identified, then we're going to set our validation comparison type into our array, into our programmatic description, and we're going to remove that item from our list. And this is where we actually gave a hint. If we didn't actually have validation, we just basically defaulted to exist and said you might want to put exist in there to be specifically what it is that we're looking for. Hey folks, listen, I've run out of time and I'm going to have to do a third video. So take a look at the third video after this one, and I'll continue on with that in just a moment. Thanks for watching.